Okay, very good. So we will start with a little delay, but we are prepared for all situations. So welcome to this session that is called Patient Safety Throughout the Entire Patient Journey. My name is Mirka Cikelova, and I'm the General Secretary of the European Patient Safety Foundation. And it's my pleasure today to be moderating this session with our esteemed speakers that are bringing different views and experiences from clinical practice, regulatory frameworks, industry, and also patient advocacy. We also have covered Swedish and then global perspective, and then with me a little bit the European perspective as well. So I hope we will have a nice session and interesting discussions. So please let me welcome our speakers. Dr. Marit Lindberg, who is a general practitioner and the healthcare investigator at the Swedish Accident Investigation Authority. Hello, Marit.
Thank you.
Mrs. Sofia Wallström, who is the CEO of LIF, the trade association for the research-based pharmaceutical industry in Sweden, and the former director of the Health and Social Care Inspectorate, which is a government agency. Mm-hmm. Hello, Sofia.
Hello.
Good morning. And we have Mr. Brian Kennedy, who is the executive director of the Global Alliance for Patient Access. Welcome, Brian.
Nice to be here.
So just to introduce a little bit the topic, we have already heard about the healthcare that is changing, evolving rapidly, and it's shaped by new technologies, shifting care models, and different and increasing pressures on healthcare systems. So these changes are not impacting only how care is delivered, but also who is responsible for ensuring safety at every stage of the patient journey. While innovation holds a great potential to improve the care, it also raises new challenges. And how do we ensure that patient safety remains central amid workforce shortages, changing responsibilities, and also growing system complexities? So this session will take us through three key discussions or parts. So first, we will try to discuss and explore current gaps and challenges in patient safety. Where are the key risks at different types of maybe parts of the patient journey? And then second part of the discussion will concentrate a little bit on what are the possible solutions. So where our speakers see possible ways for moving forward. And we will try to conclude with some kind of discussion where how can we work better together? So how can we collaborate more effectively? So let's maybe begin with Dr. Marit. Marit, you, with your experiences, 25 years of experience as a general practitioner and currently serving as an investigator at the Swedish Accident Investigation Authority. So you have a unique perspective of knowing the challenges of patients, being with them every day. When we had the first discussion, so it's 4 days a week, that you are really still working as in a clinical practice. And then as an investigator, you also see where are the medical errors and where the system plays a role and how it could be improved. And also from your healthcare professional, from your personal perspective, you also know what are the challenges for healthcare professionals to deliver safe care. So my question for you would be, can you describe from your point of view where are the patient safety most at the risk in the current Swedish system from your, maybe from the first contact to the final treatment?
Yes, thank you. Sweden has 21 counties, and each one runs the healthcare in its own way based on local political decisions. So we, in fact, have 21 organizations. And safety risk starts early in the patient's journey because there is not enough access to general practitioners, GPs in Sweden. We have about 0.6 GPs per 1,000 inhabitants, which is low compared to the rest of Europe. And we also have a low number of hospital beds per person, and that was a big problem during the COVID pandemic. And in Sweden, most patients must see a GP first when they need healthcare, and the GP can then refer them to a hospital if necessary. And things can go wrong in the handover between different healthcare providers, such as the health center and the hospital. So long waits have been normalized and waiting targets are being missed. But I think once people finally get care, they usually receive high quality care. And since 2018, healthcare providers investigate their own incidents and accidents, and often they lack training, resources and time to do this. And if a hospital ward, a health center or a nursing home investigates an incident, the results of the investigation stay there. No one outside the ward sees them because the reports are not public, so they can't be found. And usually there's long time between the incident and the investigation, and it's very difficult to investigate an incident that took place long ago. And after investigation, the most serious cases are referred to the Health and Social Care Inspectorate, IBO. So that's if a patient suffers lasting harm or even dies, IBO is notified. And another big risk is shortage of medicines. We depend heavily on imports, and that creates problems on a daily basis.
Thank you very much. So you mentioned that there is a lot of workload or a lot of responsibilities holding on the shoulders of general practitioners. So how with this current, how the current shortages are impacting the possibility of healthcare professionals to still provide high quality of care and to manage also the reporting system and to take care of the patient?
I think it's very difficult for medical staff to manage incident reporting and so on. The medical staff struggle to maintain high medical quality while dealing with administrative burdens. We have a lot of inefficient systems in the healthcare in Sweden, and these inefficient systems slow things down. And lower productivity does not reduce workload for staff. So as a result, instead of focusing on real healthcare, which I think most medical staff like to do, doctors and nurses are spend time fixing process problems, such as making multiple phone calls to hospital wards to find an empty hospital bed for a patient. And then the work becomes stressful and less meaningful, and the situation itself leads to safety risks, I think.
I think this is not a unique situation for Sweden. I think what we have heard, and from our perspective of the foundation, we know that this is one of the primary problems of healthcare workforce crisis running currently in Europe. Because you also mentioned that healthcare system is a little bit different, or you have different counties, like independent organization, like if it were independent organization. So how the system, specific system of Sweden having different counties and different organizations, how is that impacting patient safety?
I think the 21 counties can't give equal healthcare. In northern Sweden, where I live and work, I live in Umeå, hospitals and health centers are sometimes very far from patients. There are not so many big towns in northern Sweden. Many people live in small villages with long distances to the nearest hospital or health center. And that's the way it's reality. But also, each county decides how to spend money around healthcare. And I think some counties make better choices than others. So that means that access, quality and safety aren't the same everywhere in Sweden.
Thank you very much. So we had a little bit of insight into how Sweden is organized and where are the challenges from the patient perspectives in the clinical settings. And now with Sofia, you are currently the CEO of the Swedish Association of Research-Based Pharmaceutical Industries. And also from your previous role as a director of the Health and Social Care Inspectorate and other governmental ministries, your unique perspectives bridges research, then life sciences, and then also decision makers' viewpoints. So as a leader who has worked in across government, healthcare inspection, and now in life science industry, could you share your perspective on patient safety in Sweden? Where are the challenges from your perspective, bridging this innovation, clinical practice, and patient access?
Thank you, Mirka. Well, I would say that the patient safety in the Swedish healthcare ecosystem is, of course, something that we have seen made significant progress in a long time. Still, we have challenges, and as I think Marit here was describing, we have challenges when it comes to ensuring consistent standards across regions, and of course we also see challenges when it comes to access and particularly I would say also integrating new technologies in a both speedy and safe way. And I think that's the key points that also needs to be addressed now to bridge innovation, the clinical practice, and the patient access together. And in order to do that, we need to work more and address its both regulatory hurdles. But I think one thing that is so clear, part of both the problem and I think the solution is a better communication between a lot of stakeholders, and that is really something that I think can be the tool also to ensuring innovation, to implement with that stronger patient perspective, and thus also better and higher patient safety.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. I would like to ask our technicians for the slide. We had one slide just for illustrations while we are talking. Thank you very much. So,
yes.
Would you like to comment a little bit?
Well, for the pharmaceutical industry, I would say, of course, patient safety is the highest priority. Ensuring safe and effective treatment is, of course, essential. It's the basis for public health. It's also the basis for trust. And I think that any compromise of this can lead to several very severe consequences and harm both patient safety and the whole ecosystem. So what we see here is the different phases and the different steps, one of each very important to ensure patient safety, all from the preclinical studies and clinical trials across approval and regulatory requirements. This is, of course, something that is very regulated, so we have a strong foundation when it comes to the safety measures in the whole of this value chain, or also in the production and quality control. What I think is important to focus more on is the post-market surveillance. What happens when it reaches patient? Does it really reach patient? And how can we empower patients to take a stronger part in following and measuring in real world? So both the real world data, the promise and the plans, and building real world evidence in the post-launch phase is a potential, I think, that will be needed to work on more. So I think focusing more on these aspects. We can get the feedback loops to work better throughout the product's life cycle. And even though I think Sweden has a strong position when it comes to insights on these areas, we do have a lot of more to work on when it comes to this.
Again, during our little introduction call, you also mentioned that Sweden is one of the few countries having the national life science strategy, and that is also impacting the development of the current European life science strategy. But you also mentioned that there is a potential for this strategy to go beyond product launch phase. So could you maybe explain a little bit about this potential?
Yeah, so I think the Swedish national life science strategy has given us really a good position when it comes to lessons learned on that, and it's very good that the government updated the strategy last fall. We see that our experiences is picking up from many countries in the European Union. Still, we do see that the Swedish life strategy needs to develop, needs to both integrate the phase after the product has come to market. It is a patient safety aspect if treatment is accessible in Sweden, in Swedish healthcare, which is it not at the moment. We have a important work to do there, but I also think that, as we said, the strategy could focus more on integrating the patient's perspective when it comes to continuous monitoring, both creating and using real-world data in order to create more of real-world evidence, and all of these loops across borders that we know that we need to have throughout the product life cycle. So that is really something that we would like to see more of in the future work.
Thank you very much. Which this patient involvement brings us naturally to our last speaker, Brian Kennedy, who is the executive director of the Global Alliance for Patient Access, which is an organization dedicated to promoting patient-centered healthcare across various diseases. So, Brian, could you maybe introduce a little bit the work of your organization?
Well, happily, and thank you. Thanks to the conference organizers. It's wonderful to be here. I'm Brian Kennedy. I'm executive director of the Global Alliance for Patient Access. Our operation is based out of Washington, D.C., but the work we do is outside the United States. So I'm happy to comment and talk about the current political situation in the United States, but I don't think we'll get to anything else if we do that. So maybe we can visit in the hall. Our focus really is on patient access, and was very interesting to hear in the comments from Dr. Marit and the discussion from the life science industry's perspective that the barriers to access that you see in Sweden are just like those that we hear about in all regions of the world. There are the access barriers of patients reaching their general practitioner that we heard about. There is the access barriers of lack of hospital beds and the inadequacy of infrastructure in many instances and contexts that exist. There is the access to the medicines that are available or access to those medicines because of the shortages that you referenced. And then as we think about the innovation that's taking place within the healthcare system, driven by the life science industry, how is it that patients are able to access those therapies? We know that for most new therapies that are approved by the EMA or the FDA, after years of research and investment that went into that, being proved to be safe and efficacious for a particular condition, that it can take years and years before those are accessible to the patients that they're intended for. And so how is it that we address all of those things? From the Global Alliance for Patient Access, we're trying to do that work really in the context of thinking about these issues and whether or not we have a patient-centered healthcare system. So I can tell you just a little bit about GAFPA, as we call it. It is an international nonprofit platform to advance patient-centered care. I have to look here because the slides are too small down below for me to see them. So what we do is we convene with stakeholders being patients, patient advocacy organizations, medical societies, policy-minded clinicians, and others in particular disease states, so that we can join together to identify what are the unmet needs in the particular disease state. We do this at global level, we do this regionally, but a lot of our work is at the national level, trying really to equip national policy advocacy as well. And then after we've identified with the stakeholders the unmet needs that can be addressed, we determine where are the opportunities to raising awareness with at-risk patients, awareness with healthcare providers, awareness with policymakers to drive greater recognition of the burden of the condition and the value of the treatment, and then to equip stakeholders with the capacity and the resources to inform policymakers. So how is it we build relationships with policymakers and really take the case to them about the value of addressing these access barriers to ensure that patients can receive patient-centered care. So real quickly here, just one thing that makes us unique as a patient advocacy organization then, is we're working across many different disease states. Most patient advocacy groups are grounded in a particular condition. The stakeholders who are convening there, the patients, healthcare providers, are thinking about and talking about these issues in their silos, so to speak, around a particular condition. We're working, as you can see, across many different conditions here: neurological, rare diseases, rheumatic musculoskeletal disease, cardiometabolic renal conditions as well. So as we're working across these different disease states, we're finding out where are the common access barriers, and they exist across all of them, but oftentimes it's necessary to meet people where they are in their disease community, really for us to go together and make the case for patient-centered care. So we convene a lot of meetings, as you can see here. We produce advocacy resources, really which are to frame out an advocacy narrative, a narrative that talks about the burden of the condition, the burden upon the patient, the burden upon caregivers, the burden upon the healthcare system, the burden upon our society, the burden upon the climate that we heard about earlier today. One area that we to think about the climate that we oftentimes don't connect with our healthcare system, but I thought the comments from Rob from WHO were dead on. We do a lot of work around chronic kidney disease. And as you know, most patients with chronic kidney disease don't receive a diagnosis till they're in late stages of chronic kidney disease. By that point, they're likely to have to go on to dialysis. Dialysis is the most energy and freshwater intensive therapy there is. If we were able to screen and detect at-risk patients early in their journey and put them onto a medicine for chronic kidney disease and either delay or prevent them from going to dialysis, that has a profound impact upon the energy consumption and the fresh water consumption. So these things that happen within our healthcare system do impact our climate. You walked in 1 minute late. I just called out your comments earlier. So no problem. And then we work with stakeholders so they can engage with policymakers. So how is it that you come and make your case to policymakers? And policy advocacy is about relationships, getting to know those who are in key positions within the government, who really have the mandate to work on these issues, and sharing the lived experience of people who have these conditions and their healthcare providers to inform that discussion. And you know, the stories that are shared are really important to motivate policymakers to say, yes, we have to act, but then we have to equip them with the data to support not only the burden, but what the solution is. And so oftentimes we're gathering that data and presenting it in a way that's going to be able to allow for policy making. And then finally, raising awareness. So people need to understand, you know, what is the situation, what is the burden of the condition, as we talked about the burden across from patient to caregivers to healthcare system to society as a whole, to understand the need to act. And so we work with stakeholders to develop and wage awareness campaigns at the national level as well. So ultimately, we're fighting for patient-centered care. So across all these different disease states and these activities are taking place. And that's a term that gets thrown around at conferences like this a lot. Patient-centered care, person-centered care, you know, this notion. But what is that at the end of the day? Well, You know, our idea of a healthcare system that is grounded in patient-centered care starts with prevention. The only way we're going to overcome many of the challenges that were talked about in the first system is we've got to move from thinking about these conditions once people are sick to earlier in disease, right? And that starts with prevention. So how is it that we invest in public health campaigns to really encourage people to engage in the behaviors, the healthy lifestyles, focused on diet and exercise, all the things we can do that we know are going to prevent the onset of non-communicable diseases and mitigate the risk from those. And then we have to be vigilant. As I talked about earlier, early detection. So if we can be screening those who are at risk and detecting early and treating earlier, we substantially reduce the burden on the healthcare system of patients who are presenting late stages of a disease. And then we have to treat, I have to look up here to see my slides. So we definitely want to be treating patients, not diseases. The idea there is we have to have a holistic approach to healthcare. Too often we're working in very individual silos. We're working around, this particular diagnosis gets this particular treatment, but we're missing the big picture around the person. And we understand if we have a person-centered approach that takes into the fact their comorbidities, the context of their living situation, what their priorities and values are, a healthcare plan that's designed with those in mind is going to be much more likely to succeed. So our healthcare systems have to do that. And let's try to strive towards healing, not management. We hear all the time at meetings like this, manage the disease, manage the condition, optimal management that takes place. Well, management's good. Healing's actually better, right? If we can get somebody where they're living signs and symptoms free of the condition, where their life is characterized by their ability, not their disability that's resulting from the condition, if they have a high quality of life as they age, as we were talking about earlier, that's what good looks like. We think about remission in the context of cancer. That's a success story. Great news. My mother is in remission from her cancer, right? We need to think about remission across all these non-communicable diseases. It's achievable in many instances with the innovation that's taking place, but we have to set a high bar for the system. But we have to be equitable. I just returned from Africa for a conference that was held down there on NCDs, and to listen about the situation, the context and what the healthcare systems are operating there, the lack of equity that exists across our healthcare systems, but it's true in our own countries as well. We see the disparities in care that exist. And as I mentioned before, we live in the golden era. The innovation that's out there is just extraordinary, right? You talk to somebody in practice when they came out training 10 years ago or 15 years ago or 20 years ago, what was available for the patient with MS compared to today and the difference that makes in their lives. But if we put on the highest shelf where only the richest can reach it, what's the point of all the investment that took place? So we have to have an equitable healthcare system. So I've not spoken to safety. I know that's what we're here about. But across all of this, right, safety is part of ensuring that we have a healthcare system that is truly patient-oriented. So we'll come back to that as we move forward.
Thank you very much, Brian. So you already touched the need of being equitable and to be able to use the potential that we have. But we know that with the current, for example, burden that is on healthcare workforce and on primary care, maybe general practitioners. So it's really difficult. So we have this innovation, but to translate them into practice and to allow healthcare professionals to effectively use them, they need time. They need education, training, they need support, they need help with the implementation of technologies. So what from from your perspective, Marit, what are the help or the support that general practitioners or the primary care needs to be better equipped to ensure patient safety?
In my opinion, it's important that medical staff should have more say when making big decisions of many sorts. We recently had huge problems with a new patient records IT system here in Sweden. And if staff were more involved in processes like this, we could avoid many problems. And I think it's very important to remember that medical staff are the true experts in healthcare. And it is very important to look at work as done instead of work as imagined, because it's a big difference between work as done and work as imagined. And I think it's very important that reports, safety learnings and recommendations are public and easy to find and easy to understand.
So one of the very good examples of how things could be working and how they are really working is the incident investigation systems.
Yes, I think
where the potential is there. So we have the potential. We have in many countries there are incident reporting systems where healthcare professionals have the possibility to report incidents or near misses. But there are many barriers in this system to work properly. So maybe if you could also say what could be done better so that that we can learn from these incidents or near misses.
It's necessary to have an independent, no-blame patient safety investigation system that can help society to learn rather than punishing people for making mistakes. When healthcare workers don't fear punishment, they can talk openly about what happened, what went wrong, and then we can learn, we can act proactively, and we can manage the risks. And I think healthcare can learn a lot from aviation. A system-based approach to risk assessment and management is recommended in all industries. It's much more important to analyze the systems that generated the undesired outcome rather than the undesired outcome itself. And the Swedish Accident Investigation Authority, SHK, carry out independent, no-blame patient safety investigation, and the major goal is understanding, not punishing, blaming, or pointing fingers. And our reports are publicly available, and we do our very best to make the reports easy to understand. And that's very important.
Thank you very much. And I don't know if your reports are also in English, are they?
The summaries are in English.
Summaries are in English because we are following as a European Patient Safety Foundation. We try to follow these independent investigation bodies, and there are only few of them in Europe, just for information. So we try to follow this report and share them through the network because this is really very useful information from which we can learn.
But due to lack of resources, SAKH haven't been able to start more than a few investigations.
Yes. I think that's the case again, because also it's very very difficult to do the investigation properly. Sofia, so when we were discussing before, through our little call, so that I could understand a little bit more perspectives, we came to this conclusion or to this point where patient safety, we look at it as a side effect of the system that works in a certain way, and then we have medical errors, and then we have incidents, and we have the harm for the patient. So and we agreed that we could maybe try to move it. So what do you think? How can we do the switch that patient safety become the core of the system and the priority of the different of especially the decision making level?
Yeah, it's clear that patient safety is not only avoiding to do the wrong thing, it's also to being able to do the right thing. And I think just to pick up on what you said there, Brian, a patient who lacks access to effective treatment is of course exposed to a patient safety risk and patient harm related to failure of the healthcare systems to offer effective treatment is really something to keep in mind. And to position patient safety, or reposition maybe, is really a core priority for both organizations and the systems. I think we really need to see it in a holistic perspective and really need to understand that this is a complex ecosystem where a lot of stakeholders and a lot of functions need to be in place, and it's always the weakest link that is the main focus, that needs to be the main focus. And I think that the collaboration culture that we have in Sweden, it is really a good foundation, but we need to enhance that even more, and we need to make sure that the collaboration really leads to action. That is something that we know a lot of things, but we don't really see the action to follow on different kinds of projects. I think that data sharing, data collection and data sharing among healthcare providers and life science industry and of course patients, but also the regulatory bodies. I think now with the European development and the EHDS coming, we really need to see all of these perspectives and the stakeholders coming together. Well, with that, I see that we really have a strong possibility to contribute more to this.
Thank you very much. So, yeah, it is clear that patient safety is a shared responsibility, and every stakeholder needs to take this responsibility and can improve the system. So what do you think, what are the concrete actions that we could foster collaboration? How can we include the patient organization? How can we make their voice to be heard? How can we make them be stronger?
Yeah, you know, if you're a company making widgets or you run an airline, safety has to be a huge part of your culture. And from the top of the organization all the way down, safety has to be something that's stressed every day. You go on the factory floor, there's a big sign saying 110 days since our last accident, right? When you go to the airport, airline, they have everybody involved in the safety culture, including the passengers, where they walk you through what procedures you're supposed to go through in order to ensure safety in the flight. Same has to be in the healthcare system. Safety in a healthcare system has to be a primary value, has to be ingrained in the culture, and we have to have all stakeholders participating in it. So very specifically, what can happen is, one, at a system level, there has to be advisory groups that are comprised of the patient advocacy and the other stakeholders in the healthcare system, and also that those advisory groups have to have diverse representation on them, meaning people who are in different contexts, different situations, are all informing the policies and procedures that are going to govern safety within the healthcare system. Then, at the clinician-patient level, safety has to be part of the discussion too. So, that happens in a couple different ways. We're prescribing a medicine, that the patient is fully, engaged in shared decision-making, understanding what are the risk factors of the medicine, what are the potential adverse consequences or side effects that exist, how to watch for those, how to manage those, how to be vigilant for them, or really a buy-in between the patient and provider. There has to be communication that's taking place about adverse events, and so that those are being, shared, publicized, and discussed, and everybody's at the table and talking about how we're going to manage those going forward. And then finally, we have to leverage the technology that we have. We now have the electronic medical record, and patients can access that. We've got the AI and the chatbots, etc. So all this information that's available, let's use it in a positive and constructive way, that we're not only using our pharmacovigilance and making sure that people aren't suffering from any type of adverse events, but they have real-time knowledge as to what's going on. And that's critically important, because the other thing we got into in the first discussion is the level of disinformation that's out there at this point. So we call it Dr. TikTok, right? People are online and social media picking up all kinds of misinformation that's really based on fear, that's really trying to fuel them into different behaviors that are going to be injurious to their health at the end of the day. We all know about vaccine skepticism and how that's being promoted online. Some of the work we do is in cardiovascular disease and around cholesterol management. There's a whole bunch of influencers out there who are telling people that actually their cholesterol is good for them, and that their statin that's lowering their cholesterol is what's causing their Alzheimer's at the end of the day. So this level of misinformation that gets generated out there, unless we set the record straight And the ones to do that are trusted sources of information. And who do you trust? You trust who you know. So local healthcare providers, local patient advocacy organizations, talking to people in plain language about these issues is absolutely critical to overcome the safety risk that all that disinformation represents.
So with the patients being kind of covered, well, we heard what we need to do to have a patient voice heard. But what I miss personally at the European and even global discussion, I really miss the healthcare professionals' voice, because we have lots of organizations that are representing healthcare professionals, but I don't hear them in these discussions. I really miss their representatives in many of the discussions about the future of the healthcare, but also I miss them at the development stage of the new technologies. I miss them at the implementation stage of the technologies or changing the work processes. How can we ensure that we can hear the voice of healthcare professionals better?
I think it's a big mystery. I agree with you. But I think they have to be invited because it's not our traditional role. We work with patients, and that's what we do. We don't make any decisions. We have to come forward.
And what could be done to help with that? Because there we have this time constraint and the shortages problem. When you have such a limited time and you already have a lot of work, it is really difficult to engage in such a conversation.
But I think we have to, some of us in the medical healthcare, we have to get more influence, and then we can't see the patients, of course, but someone must ask us what we want, because we are the one who knows what to do.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, to be sure that our European Patient Safety Foundation is bringing the voice of the healthcare professionals. We are currently working with different European organization and nurse organization representing them, and we try then to translate their needs into these discussions. But then we need the policymakers, we need the decision makers also to be open for the collaboration or for this kind of hard discussion, because it is not always about the potential of the technologies and the huge potential of life science industry in this change. But I know that there is also frustration on their side when there is the technology that is developed, but it's not implemented properly. There is not the training, so the potential that could be reached is not really being translated in the everyday practice. So how can we improve this collaboration? How can we have all the stakeholders around the table?
Well, of course, one thing is to address it the way that you do right now, and to really acknowledge that the patient safety perspective, the patient safety principles need to be embedded in all of the healthcare delivery, and by that I mean from research all the way to the patient, and of course a more clear accountability, a more continuous training for healthcare professionals. I would say that is some of the keys that we need to get to more. And of course, since a lot of stakeholders are needed in all this ecosystem, I would also say the potential for the life science industry is huge, actually, and also a way to get a more common ground when it comes to all of these challenges that surround both the healthcare systems in a lot of countries, and also to keep and enhance the patient safety work.
Thank you very much.
Can I just give a shout out to one group of healthcare providers who've done a great job in safety, and that's anesthesiologists. So how many are familiar with what your anesthesiologist actually does? I really didn't know until I looked into this. It's more than just about putting people to sleep for surgery, but they kind of are looking at all the medical issues around somebody who's under surgery. And one of the areas that the World Federation of Anesthesiology Societies a few years back prioritized was really looking at the safety of blood transfusions. So, obviously blood being replaced in the context of surgery. And there were issues regarding safety and transfusion, many of which there's been progress in many places, but many parts of the world, that sort of progress hasn't been represented. But as an outgrowth of the work that they were doing to promote safe transfusions, they adopted the principles of patient blood management, what good looks like. A resolution was passed at the World Health Assembly over a decade ago. The World Health Assembly subsequently put out a policy brief giving instruction to member states on policies that would prioritize patient blood management. And then any day now, we're promised, the WHO is actually publishing guidelines on patient blood management. But as an outgrowth of that came a whole new focus on blood health in its totality. And for us to be thinking about the implications of blood issues, whether that be anemia, iron deficiency, excess bleeding, etc. So it really was the leadership of the anesthesiologist in taking up a patient safety issue that not only addressed it in that context, but started to elevate a whole new kind of way of thinking about our blood, its role in our health, the implications to cancers and non-communicable diseases, and really will have some, I think over the years to come, some a greater attention and prioritization given to it.
And just maybe as we heard, simplifying the word, what can be done with better blood management of patients? So with early detection of anemia, if there are blood tests before the operation and the anemia levels are not correct, we can postpone the operation and then lower the need of blood transfusion. So it has a huge impact on the whole system. So just that's a little bit, it's one of my favorite topics, yes, as I worked with anesthesiologists for many years. So I would like to thank very much to our speakers. You can see that patient safety, discussing patient safety, the topic is too wide, so it's difficult to conclude in 50 minutes. But I would like to thank you for your attention. Thank you to our speakers for very nice discussions. And let's together try to move this view of patient safety of being something as a side effect. And let's think, and I invite you to think, how can we, instead of react, start anticipating? Because with our global challenges and what is coming, we will not be able to react all the time. We need to be ready to anticipate new risk. We can't just, start working on the current risk now. It will be too late because the new risks are coming. So we need to be ready for the new ones. So that's just the thinking for you. And if we can have my last slide, and we will try to continue this discussion during our annual patient safety conference that's of European Patient Safety Foundation, where you are always welcome to join us. In Germany, that will be in collaboration with our local affiliates from Germany. And FOKUS Patient is one of our affiliates, so it's always present there. So thank you very much one more time for your attention, and I hope you enjoyed the session.